Hello everyone, and welcome to this presentation from Mason Frank on how to stand out as a Salesforce candidate. My name is Andy Mason, and I'm one of the directors here at Mason Frank, and I appreciate you taking the time out to join us. I hope it adds value for you as you look towards your next great job within the Salesforce ecosystem, as the world of work has changed so much recently. The good news for you all is that the world looks to recover from the events of the last year or so. I think it's safe to say that digital transformation has jumped the list in terms of priority, meaning that we are seeing a huge rise in demand for talented Salesforce professionals. So there are opportunities for those of you who are either actively looking to move on or simply maybe unhappy in your current role, considering your options. What that does mean, though, with a number of opportunities around the corner, is that it's never been more important to stand out when looking to enter the job market. If you can do that, then you'll have your pick of some really incredible projects that are coming up on the horizon. In order to help guide you, we'll be using data from our Mason Frank Salary Survey, the most comprehensive independent study of Salesforce professionals anywhere on the planet. Every year, we survey thousands of professionals of all levels across the Salesforce ecosystem to find out what makes them tick and keep your finger firmly on the pulse in terms of market trends. It puts us in great position to advise you on what Salesforce professionals want, what their employers need, and what you need to do in order to stand out. Just before I go any further, just to let you know that we will be recording today's session and uploading it so you can watch it at a later date. So please don't worry too much about taking notes. Feel free to sit back and relax, and we will mail all attendees a link where you can watch the presentation back afterwards. So to quickly run through what we'll discuss today, I'll give you a quick introduction of both myself and Mason Frank, first of all, before explaining a little bit more about the Mason Frank Salary Survey and why it's such a great resource to use for this presentation. We'll then move into some of the results from the survey and how those key findings affect you as you look to get on the edge of the job market. We're very honoured to have Chris Gardner, a 26 times certified Salesforce MVP, who will also share some of his insights. I'll then give you a quick summary with some key takeaways before giving you an opportunity to ask me any questions, whether it's on the contents of this presentation or just Salesforce careers advice in general. Okay, so my name is Andy Mason. I've been in recruitment for over 20 years, and I've been part of the Mason Frank Group for 11 years since its conception in 2010. And my job today is a director solely focusing on the UK business.
Yes, I'm Chris Gardner. I am a 26 times Salesforce certified architect. I've spent a lot of time in the Salesforce consulting space. I've also worked for some end user companies. Huge Salesforce nerd. I love talking about Salesforce, blogging about Salesforce. So very excited to be here and discuss some of the kind of key skills that employers are looking for.
Hi, everybody. I'm James McDonagh. I'm also a director / EVP at Mason Frank. I've been a specialist IT recruiter for 11 years, and I've been leading the US side of Mason Frank since the middle of 2020. I'm sure if you've managed to find this webinar, you already know about us. But for those who don't, here's a quick overview as to who we are and what Mason Frank does. So firstly, we're a dedicated Salesforce recruitment company. In fact, we're the largest in the world. We have 186 consultants based in 15 offices around the world, from New York to Tokyo, Berlin to Melbourne. And we don't just know Salesforce, we therefore know the local markets around the world as well. We don't work with any other technology. This is all that we do. Day in, day out, we work solely on Salesforce projects, helping to deliver great Salesforce professionals. We live and breathe the ecosystem, and we understand it better than any other recruiter in the world. Since 2010, we've placed over 6,000 professionals across organizations all over the world. So no matter what your background is, where you might like to work, or your circumstances, we've got experience of your situation, where you've been and where you want to be. From SMEs, enterprise companies, Fortune 500 businesses, to ISVs and partners, we've worked with thousands of different organizations. We know the marketplace better than anyone. We also know the product because we use it ourselves. With more than 1,700 licenses, we're one of Salesforce's biggest customers. We know the value of using a CRM, how to get the most from it, and why hiring the right people is key to any implementation of it being a success. We know the range of Salesforce products from Einstein to Pardot, so we believe that we have a better understanding of both the platform and the ecosystem than anyone else. That means we know exactly how and where you fit in and what you need to do in order to make sure you're connected with your dream role. We offer interview training and preparation to make sure you're best placed to land your next great job. We can assist you with relocation options, as well as offering ongoing support to make sure you're happy in your role. In fact, 85% of candidates that we place remain with their employer for more than 2 years. In short, we're pretty well placed to advise on the job marketplace when it comes to Salesforce. As I mentioned earlier, it's the largest independent survey of Salesforce professionals anywhere. This is the 7th year that we've surveyed people working within the Salesforce ecosystem of all levels to gauge their thoughts and feelings on the issues that affect them, the products they use, the trends on the platform, the things that motivate and demotivate them and cause them to move employers, as well as taking anonymized salary information so that we can get the most accurate picture of what people working around the world with Salesforce are earning or should be earning. In total, we analyze hundreds of thousands of different data points to be able to present this to you. So it's not just something we hastily put together. It's an industry leading document that gives an incredibly comprehensive view of those working on the front line with Salesforce. It includes a city by city breakdown as well. So you can make sure that wherever you are and whatever you do, that you're being paid fairly for the work that you're doing. You can also see the benefits your peers are receiving, what they're doing to stand out in terms of certifications, the workload they have, and the issues affecting them. In short, it's the most comprehensive resource anywhere in the world that will tell you what it's like working with Salesforce, which allows you to put yourself front and center when you're looking for your next dream job. So, rather than continue to just tell you why it's so great, let me move on and talk to you through some of the key findings from this year's salary survey that will help you stand out as a candidate on the Salesforce job market. Let's start with what the average person working within the ecosystem looks like in terms of experience. Well, as you can see, there's quite a spread in terms of general tech backgrounds, with the average respondent having about 10 years of broader technical experience. When it comes to Salesforce specific experience, then that shifts quite a bit, with the average amount of platform specific experience being halved to around 5 years. So certainly, if you're new to Salesforce and you're wondering if you're going to be way behind the curve in terms of experience, then the great news is, in fact, for every person listening to this, that your career in Salesforce is not going to depend on how long you've been working in it. It's going to come down to things such as certifications, demonstrable ways of verifying your skill set, as well as your soft skills. We'll move on to all that really soon.
Before moving on to certifications and the official pathways to learn Salesforce, I think it's worth quickly pointing out that we asked people who completed the survey for suggestions of where they kept up to date with the platform. Obviously, trailhead badges and certifications are going to be more valuable to you in terms of actual career development. But if you're looking to keep up to date with the various changes and updates and want a more general overview, it's really worth checking out this list, which is in the report. Obviously, if you're an experienced professional, you're likely to be doing this already. Although hopefully there may be a few ideas on here for new places that you can go for learning resources. But if you're a little less experienced, I really can't stress how important self-learning is and making the sort of effort to keep up to date with the ecosystem that you're working in. While employers are looking closely at hard skills, so things like certifications you have, they're quantifiable. Soft skills, such as a hunger to improve and develop, wanting to learn more and self-study, are incredibly desirable and harder to demonstrate. I always think lunchtime is a good indicator of your soft skills. Don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting you never eat, but what I would say is once or twice a week, what are you doing at lunchtime? Are you checking out Salesforce Ben's blog, or maybe playing in a sandbox environment or something? These are hard things to quantify in the hiring process itself, but it's about having that mindset where you're invested in the technology beyond just looking in and out. And it's the sort of attitude that has a trickle down effect into everything you do. If you're reading up and finding out what's happening on the platform, you'll want to get your hands dirty and play with it, and you'll be trying to get as many trailhead badges as you can, or pestering your boss to support you with certifications. That's usually followed by wanting to move to an employer who'll support you in that and is happy that they can offer you the chance to build on that base that you have. So, as I say, these resources aren't necessarily about getting you straight in at your next job with a big pay rise. They're about helping getting you started in terms of improving yourself as a candidate. If you're perhaps sat thinking you've got 10 to 15 trailhead badges, but maybe don't need to be certified, or there's no rush. There is, and these are some fantastic resources to help kickstart your learning path in Salesforce. So, with certifications in mind, let's look at them in a little bit more detail. So this might sound an obvious thing to start off with, as 94% of respondents to the survey said they use Trailhead, but this would also give you an indicator of how far into a lot of your peers are. Realistically, you could maybe be sat there at home with 24 badges, maybe studying for your next one, thinking you're in a pretty strong position, but look at the amount of people ahead of you who've dedicated more time and energy into their knowledge of the platform. And from an employer point of view, these badges don't just represent your technical proficiency, but they also showcase your attitude. Are you someone actively trying to expand their skill set, who's invested in knowing more and improving constantly? As much as we may wish to claim otherwise, a lot of employers are aware that the hard skills needed to get under the bonnet of a Salesforce implementation can be taught, whereas a genuine hunger and desire cannot. So while Trailhead is an amazing place to brush up on your skills and learn new things, there's much more to it than when it comes to looking at a new role. Having that desire to learn and improve is such an important factor during the hiring process. So it's little wonder that these are continuing to get themselves certified and learn more are the ones whose careers progress. Obviously, your dream scenario after that is to get yourself certified. Not only is it further evidence of your progression through the platform as a professional, but nearly half the respondents who did reported an increase in their salary after earning a certification. So it doesn't just make you more attractive to employers, but it'll make you more valuable as well. Obviously, it's difficult for us to suggest which certifications you should be studying for. It depends entirely on the area you want to go into within the platform itself. But here's an idea of the most popular certs that our respondents held, as well as some of the most popular products on the platform. They cover a number of roles, and plenty of candidates have more than one cert. So it's always worth bearing in mind that a certification is just the beginning of your journey rather than the culmination of it. Once you've started, you should always be looking at what's next, and a good employer should be helping you facilitate that. The survey also includes the most used Salesforce products amongst respondents. So I'm hoping including these will perhaps give you an indicator of some of the areas that, if you aren't familiar with at the moment, might be worth looking at as a starting point. Especially at this moment in time, organizations will be looking to use Salesforce and additional products more rather than less. It's a platform that can actually help streamline business function, so businesses are looking to the additional products that they can adopt to help with this. So while I'm aware that this isn't actionable advice, it's too broad an area to give you specifics on what you should specifically look to study. What I'm saying really is that you need to be increasing your knowledge base consistently with such an aggressively expanding platform. And while that decision-making process can be difficult, this study contains a lot of information that you can use to help get you started. Look at what's in use. Maybe reach out across the Ohana to the sort of products being used in your vertical and look to start on those now. Alternatively, some of these most used products could perhaps be an area that you'd not previously thought of career-wise and may be worth exploring options on Trailhead. One of the great things about this platform is the ability to engage and explore. You don't have to commit huge financial resources, and even if you get a Trailhead badge in something you may not eventually apply in your day-to-day role, it's another badge and more evidence of you're willing to learn and develop, which is a good thing to have on your application.
So this question was aimed at what would increase your earning potential, but I still think it's pertinent as a pointer of how to stand out as a candidate within the Salesforce job market. It stands to reason that what makes you more valuable as an existing employee is also what makes you valuable or attractive as a potential hire. Understandably, experience will clearly play a part in all of this, but also exposure to large projects does as well. So if you feel you're undervalued or overworked in your current role, or even just not remunerated according to the responsibilities you have, then make sure your resume reflects the work that you do. If you're essentially covering 2 or 3 other roles, make sure those skills and tasks are reflected, as you may have a skill set beyond the job role that can actually be incredibly appealing to a potential employer. Similarly, if you've been exposed to a really big project, detail what was involved in it. It all depends what you want from your next move, but plenty of people move from an under-resourced team in a large enterprise client, for example, to a smaller organization that will appreciate the breadth of experience that you can bring to the role and compensate you for it as well. Similarly, looking at it here, the vertical you're working in can make a difference. So, being stuck in what feels like a rut somewhere within a sector doesn't mean that you need to fall out of love with it and look elsewhere. It's actually a strength that can make you more desirable and result in a really positive outcome. One thing we experience regularly from candidates is that they work in, say, the financial sector and they're dissatisfied with their employer. And so the first thing they say to us is, I need to get out of this industry. When actually they have a specific type of knowledge that applies to that sector, that's really desirable to other employers who can offer them what they're looking for. So it might not be a case of standing out as a candidate on that front, but it's certainly something worth considering when you're looking to move on, is that actually your experience in a specific sector is really desirable beyond you just being a Salesforce professional. You could have a range of skills that make you hugely desirable and a ready-made fit for another project, rather than someone with potential. Don't ever underestimate your experience, and don't confuse your unhappiness with a particular employer as you being fed up with the industry itself. We're going to move on to job satisfaction in a moment, but we're really fortunate to be joined by Chris Gardner, aka Salesforce Chris, who's going to give us a bit more detail on why these skills matter, as well as the certifications that will help you as well.
So certifications are obviously very important in the Salesforce space. They're a good way for employers to understand your skill set, validate that skill set. Salesforce breaks down their certifications into some categories. So we have the Salesforce administrator. They're really somebody who's focusing on day-to-day maintenance, upkeep, management of a Salesforce org. Salesforce architect is focusing on typically much larger initiatives, including multiple systems, multiple clouds, complex integrations. A Salesforce developer uses Apex code, Lightning components, other development tools to customize Salesforce even further than an admin would. Salesforce marketers typically live in 2 tools that Salesforce purchased. So Marketing Cloud and Pardot, they are part of Salesforce's larger cloud initiative, but they help manage communication between a company and its customers. A Salesforce consultant, which is where I started my career, provides support and services to a company, whether that's an implementation, ongoing services, help understand how to implement something, best practices. And lastly, they recently released a new path called the Salesforce Designer Path. Currently only 1 certification there, but what that focuses on is a user's experience inside of Salesforce, making sure they have a pleasant experience, understand how to use the system. So each one of these different paths have different certifications inside of it. Some of them might. Consultant is both in the consultant and marketing categories. A Marketing Cloud developer would be in a developer and marketing category. So choosing your path really comes down to what interests you in a role. What do you enjoy doing in Salesforce? If you like the idea of owning an org long term, working continuously to improve it, an administrator path is probably a very great fit for you. If you like writing code or you like planning and integration, advising people, there's probably a path in the consultant or architect or developer space. So one cool thing about Salesforce is it's constantly evolving, so you can mix and match certifications and career paths as you go. You can continue to develop new skills and adapt your career to whatever it needs to be. So based on the survey results, there were several important technical skills and soft skills identified by employers. I worked with a lot of different Salesforce clients, a lot of different companies, and I can confirm that these are definitely some very high demand skills. So the one that was rated the highest, 72% of respondents identified this one, is understanding business models. So what that means is understanding how a business operates. What does a typical support process look like? What does a sales process typically include? And these are typically very focused on industry specific processes. So a SaaS company, software as a service like Salesforce, has a very different sales process than a manufacturing company that builds giant machinery. So having some industry specific knowledge is very important to an employer. And really the primary driver for this is best practices. An organization wants to know that they're doing things correctly for their industry. They want to know they're doing things like other people do. The second skill identified by 64% of participants was project management skills. So for project management, the key is communication. Making sure that you set expectations and maintain those expectations is crucial for any role, Salesforce or not Salesforce. Mismatched expectations, unmet expectations is one of the most common reasons a project fails. And expectations really comes down to communication. Clear, frequent communication on deadlines, on issues is kind of key there. Lastly, the third skill, business development skills. So for most companies, Salesforce represents a pretty significant investment. They're buying a lot of licenses, they're paying a lot for this, so they want to know they're getting the most value out of the tool as possible. And this value is really driven by efficiency. So understanding how to provide value through good processes, training, and enablement is key. All right. So now on the soft skill side, respondents identified some soft skills that are important for a candidate to have. Unsurprisingly, the first one was flexibility and the ability to adapt. This is something I think is extremely important, specifically for the Salesforce ecosystem. Salesforce is constantly changing. They have 3 releases a year where they improve processes, release new features. Also, businesses are constantly growing and changing. So being able to pivot and be flexible is very important. One item that I would add is that flexibility really needs to be balanced with accountability. So it's important that you're flexible and can adapt, but you also need to hold people accountable, because changing requirements makes it very difficult to deliver things on time, makes it difficult to manage expectations. So as we discussed in that previous slide, project management, you need to find a good balance between being flexible and also providing value and holding people accountable. Second item, analytical skills. So employers really have 2 primary goals here. First is being able to find answers, whether that's being able to research through documentation, Google, finding answers that way, or through requirements gathering. So actually discussing with your users and getting the information you need is very important. The second piece is being able to break down a complex problem into manageable pieces. So Salesforce has a ton of functionality, usually touches a lot of different departments and tools. So being able to break down something very complex into digestible bite-sized pieces makes you a very valuable asset to a business. And then lastly, teamwork and collaboration. Every company wants team players. They want people who can be helpful, work with other people, but this is specifically important for Salesforce. Salesforce typically touches all different parts of an organization, from marketing all the way through finance, delivery, support. So you need to be able to collaborate with a lot of different teams, a lot of different stakeholders. They each have their own goals and requirements. So being able to balance all of that across departments and initiatives, it can be a little difficult. So that's an important skill to have. That experience is kind of crucial. So that covers a few of the primary things that an employer is looking for. And as you can see, a lot of these are really a balancing act. You want to have some experience and some skills. You need some of both to really be super successful. Certifications are a really good way to validate some of that experience and skill, but also just having experience in general is really crucial. The good news is that a lot of the skills that we've discussed aren't necessarily Salesforce specific. You can gain many of the skills that we discussed in really any role.
I think it's worth us looking quickly at what causes dissatisfaction and satisfaction in the workplace. I think it's useful to know what's affecting your peers, how they feel. It's no use us suggesting one thing when every single person is feeling the same way. So, for example, a stressful environment features quite highly. So, if you're looking for something a little more peaceful, there's a good chance that you might struggle to find it, or at least have to do a lot of research in your next potential company, looking at reviews on Glassdoor, for example, before making the commitment. Having said that, things that make people happy include challenging, exciting, and interesting work. Those two things are aligned, I think, and that it's possible to be busy, but to enjoy what you're doing and feel challenged rather than just demotivated by it. Certainly, when you're looking at the phrasing around why you're looking to move on, this is useful information. Look at the things that make people happy at work and look for those qualities in your next employer. Obviously, here at Mason Frank, we're always going to try to work with you closely to ensure that you find your perfect role. But it's worth knowing the sort of things that will make you happy rather than just coming to us vaguely unhappy and wanting to move on. As a candidate, being able to say to an employer that you want these things, that you want to, for example, be able to feel like you've contributed or have autonomy or to continually learn new things. For an employer who is able to offer these things, then being able to offer specifics like this will help you stand out. Certainly, you need to know what will specifically make you happy and keep you motivated and working hard. It will help you find the perfect fit. So you'll see that people are generally happy with their working environment, their hours, the balance, the company culture. But where people aren't happy is when it comes to that progression and around training. That's important when we come to look at the reasons why people are considering moving on. So I guess this is the real substance of this survey for you as a job seeker, the skills that you should possess. I'm going to cover hard skills first, as we mentioned those earlier, and there's no denying that they're the headline grabbers. They're the things that will make your CV get through any first sift. But as you progress through the hiring process, then soft skills will become vital. So we'll go through those as well. Hard skills are things that can be taught, but possessing them puts you out in front, which is where you want to be as competition gets tougher. For example, public speaking will mean that you can potentially be out on site with customers presenting very early on, rather than having to be trained up and eased into it. Public speaking might be terrifying, but it's also highly sought after, despite how relatively easy it is to teach. So away from simply expanding what you can do across Trailhead, look at the skills here that are attractive and work on any weaknesses you have. And make sure anything you think you're already acing is listed in applications, especially if there's scope where these things might be necessary. It's also worth noting that when it comes to scanning resumes, a lot of hiring managers will purely be looking through the skills or languages they need and comparing it to what you have. In some cases, this process will even be automated. So your resume could be an incredible roll call of achievements and experience with some truly incredible soft skills. But if you've left off an in-depth knowledge of Lightning because you think that everyone applying will have it, your resume could be discarded immediately, purely by mistake. My advice, if you're thinking of starting to put your resume together or updating it, is to download the salary survey. Look at these lists and make sure you've not left anything off that you already know. A competency test can prove you know it, but nobody can guess that you know something by the resume sifting process. Make sure you include the skills. So these are the things that will make you stand out, both in terms of hard and soft skills. When putting your resume together, you want to be able to showcase as much of this as possible. If you're applying for a specific role, then look at the project you'll be involved in and try to visualize which of these skills you're likely to need to use. Then show examples either in your cover letter or resume itself of when you've used them and make sure they're listed within your skills and attributes. Moving on to soft skills, these are things that are much more difficult to teach, so even more desirable actually. Again, look at where these things might apply in the role that you're looking for and use demonstrable examples rather than simply putting the words in your list. What problems have you solved? Give me an example of you using your leadership or management skills or a way you've innovated. As I mentioned earlier, anything on your CV or cover letter should have a solid example that you can refer to in an interview situation. Otherwise, it can look like nothing more than you checking a box. That's where candidates really stand out during the hiring process, in an interview situation, being able to back what's on their application without looking like they've been put on the spot or desperately trying to think of a half relevant example of the skill that they've been asked about. Obviously, it's hard to teach these skills, so it's difficult to suggest ways to learn them from scratch. But if you feel like any of these areas are a weakness, then I'd certainly suggest working on them, as they're the things that are in such demand, and they aren't the sort of things that an employer can say, well, we'll just get them in on a course and get them up to scratch in this area. So work on them, acknowledging them as areas of weakness and working to improve is a fantastic start. Your skills beyond Salesforce are just as important as your technical proficiency. And by that, I don't just mean your usual good communicator, works well in the team, reliable stuff. Everyone puts this. Most people have them. They're pretty hard to quantify. They won't make you stand out. Download the survey after this webinar and look at the skills I've mentioned, both hard and soft skills, and match them to any scenarios that might be required in a job spec, and be specific. So if you're a good presenter, for example, use instances of this in your application. If you've worked face-to-face with customers, that's an extremely desirable trait, and not a lot of your peers will probably excel in that. What makes you a good communicator? Are you talking about your listening skills, speaking or writing? If you funded your own certifications or studied on your own time, something that displays that you've gone beyond just doing them because the opportunity was there is another great example of having a real desire to improve. Salesforce itself can be learned. It is one of the greatest support networks of any tech platform in the world in terms of helping people to progress and develop. But the rest of these things can be much, much harder to teach. So look at the sort of things that are in demand, match them up with what you excel at, and have examples ready that can either be included in your application or mentioned at interview. Don't just add them for the sake of it. My advice here would be to have an example at hand that demonstrates every one of these skills that you mentioned. In terms of your actual technical proficiencies, look at what's in demand, but look beyond just the most popular skill sets if you want to stand out. And don't ever take anything you know for granted. If you know something, make sure it's on your resume. You never know what weaknesses a team might have that you can add, even if it's not directly related to the role. I've seen it so many times where a candidate has been put forward for a role, fits the job spec perfectly, but a hiring manager spots something else on their resume and suggests another option, often on a better compensation package too. So while it's possible for a resume to be too long, that should never be at the expense of leaving out competencies. What I will say on that front is that if you're still not sure how to put your resume together, we can help you with that completely free of charge here at Mason Frank. We can put together your experience and skills and present them to employers in a way that will get you noticed. On that note, though, tailor your resume to each role. Do not just copy and paste and hit send. It's too easy to do that, and it will miss things that an employer is specifically looking for that's only slightly different to the last job you applied for. Take time to look at the job spec, match up your cover letter and resume to fit what the employer wants. This is a great way, for example, if you have experience in that vertical, to demonstrate your experience and what you've learned and why it makes you a great fit. I hear a lot about people being rejected from resumes because they think that they're overqualified, but often it's just a lack of effort from the candidate in terms of their application. If you're looking for your dream job to increase your salary and career prospects, why on earth would an hour of your time be too much to get that right? Finally, don't ever think that you can't learn more. Salesforce is growing and evolving, and the demand for professionals over the next 12 months is going to increase massively as the world has seen the importance of a solid digital infrastructure. Businesses are rushing to transform their projects as the world looks set to change in terms of the way we work, which is great news if you're a Salesforce professional looking for a new opportunity. Certifications are a brilliant way to put a cast iron stamp on your resume that verifies your knowledge. Even if you can't do that, there are a number of other ways you can continue to develop. Learning and development should be a part of your weekly work, not something to try and fit in outside of that. And if your employer doesn't support it, then I promise, make that investment on your own time and it will 100% pay off when it comes to finding your next great job. As well as showcasing your technical skills, it also shows a real desire and hunger to develop and improve and learn more, which is the sort of employee any hiring manager wants at the front of the queue when they're looking to recruit. So really absorb yourself in the Ohana beyond just your 9 to 5. Working from home has allowed us a much better work-life balance, saved us from the dreaded commute. But you don't just have to spend that time in bed. Use it to catch up and keep yourself informed. Use that time towards your own personal development. Get yourself further on in Trailhead. Look towards certifications, because Salesforce have provided a learning platform that really allows you to stand out amongst your peers. So that's all from me today, although I'm happy to take any questions you have in a moment or so. Anything I'm unable to answer, I'll be more than happy to connect with you and get back to you with an answer away from this forum. And my contact details will also be displayed in a moment if you wish to contact me privately. Before we move on to that, the survey is available completely free of charge from our website, www.masonfrank.com. It's under market reports in the header there and goes into much more detail than we've been able to cover during this short presentation. It's a truly fantastic resource which covers salaries around the globe, as well as more trends and issues affecting those working with Salesforce. And I can't recommend highly enough that you take the time to download it and read it and absorb and digest what's in it. Our site itself is another great resource, of course. We have an incredible wealth of information on our blog, as well as the latest vacancies and the option to subscribe to our jobs via email service, where you can get the latest updates delivered directly to your inbox. But hopefully, that's given you a little bit of time to think of any potential questions, and we'll move on to the Q&A section of the presentation. Well then, does anyone have any questions about anything we've covered today or any other issues that affect you as a candidate in the Salesforce job market? Our contact details are also on screen, so anybody that would like to connect with me privately can. But are there any questions I can help you with right now?
Okay, actually, it looks as though we've got a few that have already come through in the chat box. So I'll just work through those then, if that's all right, just to get started. If you want to add anything in there, guys, that you've heard or that's just popped into your mind as a result of the presentation, that would be great as well. But I'll just kick off with the first one that I see here. I've only worked with Salesforce a little bit, but was looking to specialize in it. With having to get certified, is it going to be a bit of a nightmare to realistically join? Well, it's difficult to answer without knowing your exact background. The one thing that's worth considering, though, is that a lot of Salesforce professionals, as we saw in the slide earlier on, do come from a generalist tech background. So you can be cross-trained into the technology and certifications that will help make you stand out, but they aren't an absolute prerequisite. I mean, remember that we were talking about that hard skills can be taught, and things like Trailhead is an amazing free platform that can help you get started. But certifications are ultimately an investment, okay? So they're very, very, very useful. However, Salesforce itself is super inclusive, and there's a load of other tools, blogs, Trailhead, etc., that can help you become a more attractive candidate. So I would say absolutely not a nightmare to realistically join, but it's just depending on what you want to sort of put into it, yeah, in order to get something out. Certifications are a great tool, they're a great attraction. I'm not going to say that they aren't, but there are a whole range of other things you can do as well that demonstrate that kind of awareness and knowledge and desire to be involved in the channel too. So that was a good first question there. Let me see, there was another question here too, just saying, can you share the name of the site? I believe it was the salary survey. Yes, I think we just mentioned that there, www.masonfrank.com. You can download the salary survey from there, guys, as well. And I think also as well, we can circulate the details afterwards to the list of attendees, so we can put all of that information in there as a follow-up as well. Chris, I think that you mentioned there was a question earlier on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got a question, what about project managers? This was during the kind of certification path discussion. So currently Salesforce doesn't have anything specifically geared towards project managers. So a lot of the project managers I work with go for just general industry certifications. So PMP, project management professional. There are a few certifications in that vein. So that's typically where a lot of people will go. It would not surprise me if Salesforce adds some type of project management certification in the future, but it is not something that's currently available.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Chris. Just I'm looking at the questions that are coming through as well, and I think there may be one or two more which are just kind of pretty relevant to you, I think. Let me have a look. Let me see. So I'm coming from an app integration background, like MuleSoft, Data Power, Message Broker, but always have interest in Salesforce.com process-related work. Can I use my skill set, and how difficult would it be to make a move onto the SFDC development side?
Oh yeah, that is a fantastic question. So one of the big benefits of Salesforce's ecosystem is Salesforce is very API led. So they like to integrate with other tools, other systems, and Salesforce uses standard SOAP and REST protocols. Kind of into the technical details here, but if you have app integration background, if you've done integrations of any kind, you will likely have already been using those standard protocols. You would have a lot of familiarity. So while MuleSoft may have a little bit of a different tool set than some of these other tools like Message Broker or Data Power, just knowing general integration architecture and some of those protocols will make it very easy to move into integration on the Salesforce platform.
Okay, great. So hopefully that answers that question. Andy, there's a question here that you're probably quite well suited to answer, actually. I'm interested in a career in this platform, but don't have much experience with tech. What would you recommend my next steps to be?
Yeah, really good question. And I also see there's another question that relates to, do we only place candidates with Salesforce certifications? The answer is we place all types of people with experience and with certifications or with no certifications. It will depend purely on the circumstance and what the client is prepared to look at and hire for. There's a lot of sort of junior roles out there in which people can come on board and then progress. And most clients are actually offering the opportunity to join them. And one of the perks is that they will put them through various certifications as their career develops. Now, sorry, James, what was the original question?
I'm interested in a career in this platform, but don't have much experience with tech. What would you recommend my next steps to be?
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that piece. I would certainly look at the Trailblaze badges and getting some experience behind you in that respect, and certifications, particularly the admin. To start off with the admin, if you can get that certification, it'll put you on the right path to getting your first role within the ecosystem.
Okay, great. I'm just scrolling through now because we've got quite a number of questions coming through. So I'm just trying to make sure we're not repeating anything. Let me have a look here. Do we have any data on Salesforce in Africa? I think the simple answer to that, I think that's come from Evelyn, is not a huge amount. And the reason for that being that although we work globally, we don't have any offices at current based in Africa. You know, we don't do a huge volume of the business that we do in Africa. It tends to be mostly Europe, Asia Pacific, and obviously the United States. I will look into that for you though, and I will see if I can follow up with you privately just to see what data we do hold on the Salesforce job market specifically in Africa. It'd be interesting to know what specific part of the continent you're referring to, and see if we can if I can get some stuff over to you kind of offline with regards to that. Chris, I think another one for you. Can you do the administrator exam in Salesforce Classic?
So there is some administrator level skills that are not necessarily Lightning specific, but if you do take the administrator exam, most of the questions will be related specifically to Lightning. So I would not recommend, if you don't have a lot of Lightning experience yet, I'd spend some extra time on Trailhead and in a dev org to make sure you're very familiar with that there before you attempt that exam.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you for that. Another question, how has COVID changed the hiring cycle? Well, I'll take that one. So I can summarize that really easily for you. It's much quicker than it used to be. So the average time, basically, from a client first registering a job to us successfully placing a candidate with them has reduced from an average of 6 weeks pre-COVID to just actually slightly less than 4 weeks today. So kind of if you think about that as a 33% reduction in time. Interviews are now averaging 2 stages and are typically done via the medium we're using here, so Zoom or Teams or AWS Chime, etc. So the turnaround is quicker. And the process is therefore kind of easier for the job seeker, fortunately for everyone on this call. I'm also just trying to pull up some other statistics on that, but I think basically, here's a good one. 82% of the placements we've made in the last quarter involved no face-to-face interviews at all. So think about that. That's a staggering increase. But companies have got the confidence in us and the candidates we're putting forward to actually make, if you think about 82% of their hires without actually meeting somebody. And that has a direct effect really of the changing circumstances with regards to COVID. So a very, very good time to be kind of considering your options on the market, because, I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, it actually involves probably less kind of commitment and time investment from the candidate now than what it will have done previously. So just an interesting change there that's come about. Okay, a few more coming in then. Let me see. When hiring a Salesforce administrator, is it more important the amount of projects done or the time working as an admin? Chris or Andy, would either of you like to sort of express a view on that?
Yeah, I think sorry,
Go
Chris,
ahead,
you go first.
Okay. So a lot of the requirements that an employer is looking for is experience. So if you have spent a lot of years in a single complex org, that may have very beneficial experience, especially if it's industry focused. But if you've been more on the consulting side, it's typically more of a volume of projects because you've worked with a lot of different clients, a lot of different orgs. So it really depends on what the hiring professionals are looking for. Are they looking for somebody with a lot of experience with different clients and different orgs? Or are they looking for somebody with deeper experience in a specific industry or tool set? So a lot of that really comes down to the individual requirements of that job posting.
Yeah, I mean, I think I echo that. What I was going to say is, in my experience, I think typically from a consulting space, when they're hiring, it is diversity of project experience that's quite attractive. More from an end user perspective, length and duration with the actual application is, and the platform is probably paramount on that front. So there's two kind of aspects there.
Okay, great insights, guys. Just coming back to Evelyn as well. So Evelyn's just replied saying East Africa is your main focus. You're originally from Kenya. I love Kenya. Been there a couple of times. Got friends in Nairobi and Mombasa as an aside. I will look into that for you, Evelyn, and come back to you, because about 9% of the data in the salary survey is drawn from Africa and what's classed as Asia, but mainly India. So I'm not sure exactly how that would break down to specifically Kenya, but I'll look into that for you, and I will come back to you on that. Okay. Another question has just popped in. Is this relevant to European markets, given that over 50% of data comes from the US? Similarly, how many women versus men were polled? So again, I'll take this one then. So in both cases, all right, we should emphasize that the results in the salary survey aren't based on just purely quantitative data, but also on qualitative data, so interviews, etc., that we've actually taken place. So where we have smaller sample sizes, we still feel pretty confident that they're an accurate reflection of the ecosystem and the people working in it, because we've gone into that kind of higher level of detail with those individuals. So yes, you know, this is a good reflection of experience in terms of a gender split, in terms of a European versus a US split. So when we draw kind of broad brush conclusions, but we do take all of that stuff into account. But the beauty of the salary survey, and one of its main selling points, is the fact that you can actually go down quite granular in terms of the location and, you know, by different kind of demographic groups as well. So I just recommend you to take a look at the actual results section of the salary survey on that and see if you can find what you're looking for. If you can't, again, please do get back in touch with us, and we can see if we can give you some additional information in your specific area of interest. Another question. I had the opportunity to be a Salesforce administrator for 4 years in a healthcare setting through self-training. However, I never got certified. Do you recommend that I get the certification before applying for the job, or can the certification be obtained post-hiring. So again, Andy or Chris, I'll kind of throw that one over to you guys and see who'd like to take it.
I think my comment on that would be is that to get the certification before applying will certainly give you the edge. I always say don't let anything stop you from doing something that you want to do, right? But the fact of the matter is, I think if you get that certification, it will certainly give you the edge for applying for the job.
Yep, I totally agree there. It helps your resume stand out. If they are reviewing a lot of different people, a certification is a good way for them to validate your experience and your knowledge. So I would recommend getting it prior to applying.
Yeah, I think as well, just adding to that, I mean, you know, you've mentioned in your question that you've already worked as a Salesforce admin for 4 years in the healthcare setting. There was a part of the presentation, if you recall, where we were talking about kind of being very specifically skilled up within a certain industry vertical. Now, if the role that you're thinking about applying for is also within the healthcare sector, then you're already in an incredibly strong position to do well in that interview process and ultimately get the job. But we're at the point now where certifications in some cases are sort of viewed almost as a bit of a prerequisite. So there is no harm in doing it. Push ahead and go for the application, and you know, obviously trust in your experience to put you in a good position there. But if you're weighing up doing it versus not doing it, then certainly do, because it's kind of becoming more and more and more common for people to have that. So it can mark you out. And I don't mean this in a kind of nasty way, but it can mark you out in a negative sense if you don't happen to have it, regardless of what your experience is, because it sort of begs the question with a lot of employers, like, why don't you have it, if that makes sense? So go for it for sure. You've got some great experience there, but it's no harm at all in getting that certification. It will definitely stand you in good stead. All right.
I see one we missed earlier.
Oh, did we? Good.
Yeah. What are some non-Salesforce certifications that could help me stand out as a candidate? So there are a few industry certifications that are typical for certain kinds of roles. So I already mentioned the project management professional. That's a great just industry certification that you could get. There are also some for developers or project teams, things like a Scrum Master certification. Those are all really good and helpful because a company can use those skills across platforms. So not even just Salesforce specific, but across teams. So I would look into some of those Scrum Master and project management type certifications. Those are great ones that help you stand out.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Andy, I guess you'd be quite good at answering this one. So the phrase new normal, right? What do you expect the new normal to look like when it comes to hiring for Salesforce?
I think there will be far more remote working opportunities that are going to be available. I think what that will also do is that it will provide a far wider choice for people when it comes to their job search, you know, especially from a location perspective. It will help a lot of parents that have childcare duties and therefore be able to spend more time at home and apply for greater opportunities job-wise. And I think it will also help when it comes to leveling out the gender diversity objective for a lot of companies out there. So, yeah, I mean, it will be greater opportunity and wider choice, I think, in short.
Okay, fantastic. Cool. Well, nothing has been added to the chat box now for a few minutes. So I suppose I'll just say, guys, if anyone has another question, please feel free to get it in there now. We'll just wait a moment or two. And we will hold on. So is the session recorded? Yeah, the session is recorded and will be sent to you following this as well if you missed the start of it. Okay, so no worries, we can circulate the recording. Getting a few comments now rather than questions. Nitin, this has been a great discussion. Hoping you get in touch soon. Thank you very much, Nitin. Good luck. Another person has dropped me off the line. How can we connect with Mason Frank for help with resume review? I'm looking to move to the Salesforce ecosystem. I think the best thing to do, guys, is just follow up directly with Andy or I, myself for the United States. So it's j.mcdonagh@masonfrank.com, or Andy for Europe and the rest of the world. So be a.mason. I think that's right, Andy, isn't it? That's the format of your email.
Yep, a.mason at masonfrank.com.
I just remember at one point it was just Andy at masonfrank.com. So I wasn't sure if that was still the way it was. I haven't written it myself in a while. It's automatic. So yeah, if you want help with getting directed towards the people who can help you with the salary review, just contact myself or Andy directly and we'll point you in the right direction. All right. Okay, then, well, guys, if there's no more questions, I think that's it. We'll wrap up 3 or 4 minutes early. So thank you for your time. Thank you, Chris, for joining us as well, and obviously lending us your time and expertise. All of our details there on the screen. If you'd like to reach out to us with any follow-ups on any of this, if you didn't feel comfortable speaking or asking questions publicly or getting them answered publicly, please do get in touch with us. And if there's anything that we can do to assist you moving forward or provide any clarifications, we'll be absolutely delighted to do so. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We wish you all the best going forward, and have a great rest of the day. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.